So yesterday we missed the classes, sorry. I missed the classes. We're still in a chapter of marriage. I'll give you the choice. Should we continue reading? The next part talks about Iddah. There's another topic that was on my mind to speak about, which relates to people making videos on YouTube against Islam in general, against the Prophet, against the Quran. I think once we finish this chapter, inshallah, and after Ramadan, if Allah extends our life, we should pick these points that people raise confusion about Islam and deal with it point by point, and then post those videos to respond to those people. Because I was surprised to see how many videos out there made by either Christians or Muslims who have left Islam, or people who have converted to Islam then left Islam. This particular topic I wanted to discuss with you guys is made by somebody who reverted to Islam, remained a Muslim for 16 years, and then he says in his video that he left Islam because of points pertaining to the moral code of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. He says that for that reason he left Islam after 16 years. He calls himself Brother Ismail, and he has a YouTube channel. The title of the YouTube channel is Do Not Convert to Islam. Okay, and he has many videos, I think maybe 50 or 60, and that he's not the only one. And I've noticed, I've been listening to some of those people. I've noticed that the points they raise, scholars of Islam have responded to in depth, but they take advantage of our ignorance as Muslims towards our religion to raise those points of confusion. But I think us as Muslims living in the West and people who come to the masjid have to be equipped with answers to every single point of confusion raised by such people. Because not only for yourself, but because you can help other people and respond. Alhamdulillah, there's not a single point raised by anybody throughout history. Now Islam is 1400 years old. Not a single point, except our scholars have responded to and given very, very convincing answers. And those kind of people who raise those pieces of confusion, those points of confusion, try to give a bad image about Islam, Quran, Sunnah, Muslims, they mostly rely on unauthentic sources. That's what I've noticed. They usually pick narrations that I've deemed to be, please have the child sit down, whoever is responsible for the child. We talked about this multiple times, children running around the masjid. So number one, I've noticed the main thing is that they rely on unauthentic narrations, books of history, not books of Sunnah, because we know that we have books of history where some Muslim scholars compiled everything that was related to them, whether authentic or not authentic. They compiled them in books such as Tariq al-Tabari. That's what they rely upon a lot. Books of tafsir as well. Many books of tafsir are not restricted to authentic narrations. For instance, even Ibn Kathir, what he does is he gives you the chain of narration, and it is agreed upon by Muslim scholars. As long as you have been given the chain of narration, then he's not responsible if this narration is authentic or not authentic. It is your duty. In the past, they used to be able to do that because they had the knowledge of the different men in the chain of narration and how to determine if this narration is authentic or not. But we don't. So basically what they did is those scholars who compiled history or compiled seerah, so books of history, this is just the introduction, maybe I'll continue in the next salah. Books of history, somebody tells you, okay, look at this hadith, it says something very awful, and he brings you a narration, tell him where did you get it from. You will find mostly they will rely on books of history, not our books of Sunnah. Books of Sunnah, even the books of Sunnah are different grades, and they know that, but they try to take advantage of general public ignorance towards that. Our highest book of Sunnah is Sahih al-Bukhari, then comes Sahih Muslim. Then the books of Sunnah like Sunnah al-Tirmidhi, Sunnah ibn Majah, Sunnah al-Nasai is even higher, and so on. We have multiple books of Sunnah. So even they may choose from the weakest books of Sunnah, from the weakest, And also bring you a weak narration or a fabricated narration. Even books of Sunnah, the weak books of Sunnah have fabricated and weak narrations as well, because some scholars of Sunnah only meant also to compile, and that was their effort. They, for instance, Sahih Bukhari, he said, I will compile only the authentic according to my opinion. Okay, but some other ones did not really restrict themselves to what is truly and strongly authentic. Let alone the books of history, like Tarikh al-Tabari, Sirat ibn Ishaq, all these books of Sirah as well. These are also books of history, and that is why Muslim scholars who came afterwards have published books on the Sahih, the authentic narrations, even in Sirah. So you can't also rely on a book of Sirah like Sirat ibn Hisham, Sirat ibn Ishaq, and bring me a narration without telling me if it's authentic or not authentic. So number one, they rely on not authentic narrations. That's what I've noticed the most. Now this man here, and I chose this topic because it relates to marriage as well. It's in the it's within the topic that we've been talking about, marriage. So he talks about the story, and subhanAllah, we've been reciting also the surah that talks about this. In Fajr today we recited, وإذ تقول الذي أنعم الله عليه وأنعمت عليه أمسك عليك زوجك فلما قضى زيد منها وطن. Talks about Zayd ibn Haritha marrying Zainab bint Jahsh. Okay, and then divorcing her and the Prophet ﷺ marrying her. Let me tell you, the fabricated narrations he relied upon, the short meaning, and he brings you multiple narrations that they're all fabricated from Tarikh al-Tabari, and they say, before I tell you the fabricated narration, let me tell you the authentic narration. The authentic narration is that Zayd ibn Haritha was, before Islam, he was captured by a certain tribe. He was 8 years old. He was taken basically as a slave. That's before Islam. That tribe sold Zayd ibn Haritha in a market. That's what they used to do before Islam. So Hakim ibn Hizam, one of the later he became a Sahabi, he bought him, and before Islam he bought him from that market and he sold him to Khadija bint Khuwaylid, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ. So, and that's all before Islam. Khadija took him in, dealt with him very nicely. So, and she said to Prophet ﷺ, consider him to serve you. Prophet ﷺ raised him as his own child. And then the family of Zayd learned about his whereabouts. They didn't know where that tribe or that gang took him. So they learned that he was taken to Mecca, sold, was bought by Hakim ibn Hizam. Hakim ibn Hizam gave him a gift to his, I think it was his aunt or something, Khadija bint Khuwaylid, and then that he landed in the house of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they came looking for him, and then they came to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, "Oh, this is our son." Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Of course, you have all right to have your son back, and let's go and talk to him." By that time, he was a bit older. He said to him, "Zayd, this is your father and this is your uncle. They came here to take you. You're a grown-up boy right now. You can choose whatever you want." Then Zayd said, "I would not prefer anybody over you, Prophet of Allah, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I want to stay with you." So he's grown up. He's like a teenager, but he wants to stay with Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved him and raised him very nicely as a son anyhow. But when Zayd took this stance, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made an announcement to all the people. He says, "Bear witness that Zayd is my son by adoption now. He's actually my son." He used to be called Zayd ibn Muhammad. يَرِثُنِي وَأَرِثُهُ. He says he will inherit from me and I would inherit from him, whoever passes away first. So basically he became the official adopted son. He used to be called Zayd ibn Muhammad. Okay? Prophet ﷺ looked after his interest. This is just the introduction. We'll continue in Isha, inshallah. You have to know the background. So, and when he got older, age of marriage, he started looking for a wife for him. And of course, he was no longer a slave. He was raised as a son. He was freed. He was not a slave in the house of the Prophet ﷺ. He was raised as a son, not as a slave at all. And then he actually took the name of the Prophet ﷺ, became an actual son by adoption. That is before adoption was prohibited. Adoption meaning the changing the name. You can still adopt in Islam, but you can't change the name of the adopted son or adopted daughter to give them your own name, okay? They still keep the name of the original parents, okay? So his Prophet ﷺ started looking for a wife for him, and Prophet ﷺ found like his cousin, the cousin of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, Zainab bint Jahsh. Basically, she's his cousin. She grew up in front of him. He knew her very well. And Prophet ﷺ was older than her by many years. But basically, she grew up in front of him, so he knew she was a good lady. So he went and asked for her to marry Zayd. Zainab, of course, she's from Quraysh, from a noble house in Quraysh. She didn't like this idea. How can I marry somebody who was a slave before? At that time, still early in Islam, people had these, what do you call it? Classes. Yeah, I'm sorry? Yeah, so they had the caste, like almost like a caste. And that's what one of the bad habits that they inherited from Jahiliyyah, from the pre-Islamic era. So she said, no, I wouldn't marry somebody who was a slave before, and I don't want this, and no, please. So Allah revealed the verse saying, وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ. Prophet ﷺ said, no, you have to marry him. He's a good man, I've raised him, and he used to love him very much. He used to be called Hibbu Rasulillah, the most beloved to Rasulullah. And his son afterwards, the son of Zayd, Usama ibn Zayd, used to be called Ibn Hibbi Rasulullah. Hibbu Rasulullah wa Ibn Hibbi. He's used to be beloved to him and the son of the most beloved to him. Okay? So he actually he told Zainab, no, you have to marry him. And the verse was revealed that if a Prophet ﷺ commands مؤمن وما كان لمؤمن ولا مؤمنة إذا قضى الله رسول أمرا أن يكون لهم الخير من أمرهم. If a believer, man or woman, are commanded by the Prophet ﷺ, they will have no choice. This is the choice of the Prophet ﷺ, and he's guided by the revelation. Okay? So she accepted. Now this man, may Allah guide him, his name, he calls himself Brother Ismail. He claims that this verse, and that's a false claim, and he knows it's false. He knows. And he's just trying to deceive the people. He said, because as you know, Zayd then divorced her afterwards because she didn't get along with him. She didn't like the idea of marrying him anyhow. Then she would not listen to him. Then the marriage broke apart. And Allah revealed to Prophet ﷺ during that marriage that this is what will happen. That they will not get along. It will end up in divorce. And once he divorces her, I will command you to marry her. So he knew this idea, this is what's going to happen. Zayd used to come and complain to Prophet ﷺ, oh, she's not listening to me. I don't want this marriage to continue. She's not really happy with this marriage. And so on. Prophet ﷺ always used to say him, وَإِذْ تَقُولُ لِلَّذِي أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَأَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِ أَمْسِكْ عَلَيْكَ زَوْجَكَ وَاتَّقِ اللَّهَ. Keep your wife, do not divorce. Fear Allah. Why is the Prophet ﷺ saying that? He's saying that because he's afraid of what will happen after he divorces her. Then he knows that he will be marrying her based on the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he felt really, he felt lots of embarrassment from this because in Jahiliyyah, in the pre-Islamic era, he was considered as his son. So he felt that people will not accept this easily. How can he marry the wife, the divorcee of his son? But he's not his real son, adopted son. Allah wanted, number one, by having Zayd marry Zainab, to get rid of this caste and hierarchy in the Muslim community. Don't say that he's a previous slave. No, you are all equal except by taqwa, except by fear of Allah. So you marry him despite the fact of his history that he was enslaved one day. Number two, Allah wanted to eradicate the concept of that an adopted son is like a real son. So that is through that, how will it be eradicated? By having Prophet ﷺ marry Zainab after she is divorced from Zayd. You follow? Yeah. So Prophet ﷺ knew that this is what's going to happen, but was so embarrassed about it that he was trying his best for him not to divorce her because he didn't know how to confront the people with what's going to happen later. And that's what Allah is telling him. وَإِذْ تَقُولُ لِلَّذِي أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَأَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِ. And you are saying to the person whom Allah has granted, has blessed him, and you have also granted him a favor, of course, by freeing him and saving him from slavery and then looking for a wife for him and raising him as a child. أمسك عليك زوجك. Keep your wife. واتق الله and fear Allah. وتخفي في نفسك ما الله مبديه. And you are hiding inside you what Allah will surely show. What is that? That He will marry her. Don't try to hide it. It will happen. It will happen. وتخفي في نفسك ما الله مبديه. You are hiding what Allah will show. وَتَخْشَى النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ أَحَقُّ أَن تَخْشَى. And you fear the people while you should only fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is criticizing Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Imagine what this brother Ismail is saying. He's saying that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the thing he was hiding in his heart was that he was in love with Zainab bint Jahsh. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. She was raised in front of him. She's his cousin, and he's the one who went and asked for her to marry Zayd. And when she refused, he's the one who insisted that she marry Zayd. And when Zayd wanted to divorce her, he's the one who insisted, don't divorce your wife. And he brought fabricated narrations. And that's what we'll discuss in the Isha, inshallah. Fabricated narrations. Look at this. As if he has never seen Zainab before. They say, Prophet ﷺ came to visit Zayd while he was sick, and the curtain of covering his tent or his house opened like this, and he saw Zainab while she was naked. Imagine that. Look at this. Look at how vulgar this is. And then he immediately he fell in love with her, and he couldn't resist not having her. So he tried to hide this love in his heart, but then when he couldn't hide it, he basically commanded Zayd to divorce her so he can marry her. The exact opposite. So basically he changed the story to the exact opposite, okay? And he distorted the verses which I just explained to you to the exact opposite. That what he's hiding in his heart is love for Zainab. No, what he's hiding in his heart is that he doesn't want her to get divorced, because he doesn't want what will happen is that Allah will command him to marry her. But he is the one who chose her for Zayd. He is the one who insisted. And he also distorted the verse that prohibits a Muslim believer, woman or man, from disobeying the commandment of Allah and His Messenger. He says here, the commandment was Prophet ﷺ commanding Zayd to divorce her so that he can marry her. Astaghfirullah. While the commandment here was, what was it? For Zainab to accept marrying Zayd. Exact opposite. And I know he knows this. And he chose fabricated narrations to support his story. Inshallah, we'll continue in Isha, inshallah.
He would have married her at the first attempt, right?
What?
The other thing is, if his whole argument falls apart, because if Prophet ﷺ wanted to marry her, he could have gone straight to her.
He could have married her. She's his cousin and she's there, and she was raised in front of him, and he insisted for her to marry Zayd. Even when she refused, that verse was revealed. No, you cannot refuse this commandment from Allah. So we know they're lying, but may Allah guide him. If he's ignorant, I'm telling him this is the truth. Go back to the authentic narrations. I've actually responded to him on the comments, and he responded back. He says, so how can you tell if the narrations are authentic or not authentic? That we'll talk about inshallah.